The word locum comes from the Latin locum tenens, which means placeholder. A locum doctor is one who temporarily fills another doctor's place, either somebody who is taking holidays or for a practice or hospital that is short of staff. I worked as a locum for 2 years, working all over Australia. For me, it was mostly about trying to try out lots of different places and lots of different jobs in the search for somewhere to call a bit more of a permanent home. There are lots of other reasons why doctors would choose to do locum work. It might be that they want to practice more procedural skills like obstetrics, anaesthetics or emergency than they can in their usual jobs. It might be that they're close to retirement and wanting to keep their hand in. Or it might be that they're just wanting a complete change of scenery from their normal job in the city. Contrary to popular belief, becoming a locum is not all about the money. You can make good money as a locum, but in general, you're better off financially being a permanent doctor as a GP or a hospital employee than a locum doing the same job. If you're wanting to do it just for the cash, I'd really encourage you to think twice. Of course, there are some drawbacks to locum work. It can be isolating both personally and professionally. You might find yourself in a completely new geographical area that you're not familiar with. The protocols might be different to what you're used to. You've got to meet a whole heap of new people. All your patients are new to you, and it can be quite lonely at times as well. Of course, it's an amazing opportunity to broaden your horizons both personally and professionally. Here I was working as a flying doctor as a locum, as my very first job after being a GP registrar, working in some really remote places, and I learnt so many new skills and really found it interesting to work in those resource-limited environments. One of the undeniable perks of being a locum is the travel. You get to go to some beautiful parts of the country that you may never have been to otherwise, and you meet some amazing people along the way. And you can also avoid getting enmeshed in the deep, dark local hospital and health service politics. So where can you work as a locum? Pretty much anywhere you like. These are all the places that I went to during my time as a locum, but almost anywhere that you want to go you could find a job. You can work in private practice, hospital, remote clinics, RFDS, Aboriginal medical services, or just about anything you can think of. So you might be wondering if it's possible to do that sort of remote and emergency work as an FRA CGP without any emergency or rural qualifications. And I promise you that with a primary GP qualification and a sense of adventure, it definitely is possible. However, if you are planning to do some hospital or emergency work and you haven't done much of that lately, it might be worth doing some upskilling before you go. This is a picture from the RACGP CEMP course. ACRM has the REST course, and there are plenty of other courses such as the Emergency Trauma Management, which may be really useful. So you want to become a locum, but how do you actually start? Well, one way is to sign up with a locum agency, or 2 or 3, and there are loads of different ones around. They can help by sending out job alerts and by helping you to find a job that meets your criteria. This is a fairly straightforward way of doing it, but I found that I got a little bit annoyed by all the constant barrage of emails and phone calls from the agencies. You can also go through a non-commercial locum scheme, such as the Rural Obstetric and Anaesthetic Locum Scheme for proceduralists, and all of the state rural workforce agencies have their own GP locum schemes, and I've found these services to be really useful. Of course, the other great way of finding a locum job is by word of mouth. I spent a delightful 3 weeks in Clare with my good friend Mel Considine when I found out that her practice was looking for somebody to fill in for them. So it might be worth getting onto social media, so Twitter or the GPs Down Under Facebook page, and seeing if you can find a locum that way. Okay, so you found yourself a locum job and you're itching to get started, but there's a bit of paperwork you'll need to get in line before you go. You'll more than likely be invoicing directly to the hospital or practice, so you'll need an ABN at the minimum, and it might be worthwhile setting up a company. Talk to your accountant about your particular circumstances. You'll also need Medicare provider number, and this can take a few weeks to come through, and you may or may not need credentialing if you're planning to work at a local hospital. You'll also need to negotiate your contract with your locum host, and the sort of things that are negotiable are whether or not you take a percentage of your billings or a daily rate, the number of hours you work, whether or not there's on-call required, and whether or not flights, accommodation and a car are included. So what do you need to pack to take with you? It's worth checking with the practice or hospital whether or not you need to bring any of your own medical equipment, such as a fetal Doppler or an otoscope, because it might be frustrating if you have to share those things. Other than that, make sure that you take whatever it is that you need to live a good quality of life when you're out there. For me, that means my running shoes, a little Bluetooth speaker so I can listen to music, and I always take a sharp knife because locum accommodation is notorious for having terrible kitchen knives. It's worth just taking something to eat for breakfast on the first day because you might not get a chance to get to the shops. When you start at your new job, there's inevitably going to be a bit of a settling in period. You're not going to know anyone's names, you won't know where anything is, and all the systems may be quite unfamiliar to you. It's worth wearing a name badge so people know who you are, and also trying to learn other people's names because you will have a million questions to ask. Don't be afraid to pick the brains of the local people because they will make your life so much easier. I think it's really important when you're locuming to stay connected to other people to reduce that risk of isolation. I would always take my laptop and a Wi-Fi modem with me so that I could be connected wherever I was. And I found social media such as Twitter and FOMED to be really invaluable resources during that time, as it helped me to find other people who knew what I was going through and help me with some of those curly clinical scenarios. On the social side, my one piece of advice would be to say yes. If you get invited to dinner with a bunch of random people that you've never met before in your life, just go. What have you got to lose? And if you get invited out to an art exhibition on a random Friday night in Port Hedland, you might as well go along. You might just meet the 5 people who become your good friends over the next few weeks. So what are you waiting for? There's a whole wide world out there of fantastic work opportunities and awesome life experiences to be had. I really hope this presentation's been useful to you, and I hope to meet some of you at GP15.